I don't think it would be an understatement to label DC's Absolute Universe a huge success. Launching in October 2024, the Absolute stories quickly became standout releases. Heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, The Flash, and of course Batman were all given debuts in this brave new world, with Green Arrow, Catwoman and Martian Manhunter all getting their own stories in 2026. Following the aftermath of the Absolute Power storyline and Darkseid doing some reality-altering shenanigans, the Absolute Universe was created. A universe where heroes are now the underdogs and core fundamentals have been stripped away from them. Bruce Wayne has no money, Clark Kent isn't raised by Ma and Pa Kent, and Wonder Woman isn't given her traditional Amazonian childhood. The Absolute Universe is twisted all over, but in a way which makes meaningful and interesting changes to the characters. Here's where we land at the beginning of it all, Absolute Batman, written by Scott Snyder and illustrated by Nick Dragotta. In this universe, Bruce Wayne has limited money, no Alfred, an alive mum, and an axe to grind, literally. In this video I wanted to take a look at the story that started it all, The Zoo. The Zoo, which collects issues 1 to 6, is our first delve into the mean streets of Gotham, and while it tells a great debut story for this insane take on Batman, it also sets up more questions and storylines which would eventually come to fruition later on. However, in a microcosm, without knowing what happens next, The Zoo, well, it's absolute cinema. The Zoo poses one crucial question to us right off the bat, and that question is, what if Batman was a normal guy? Now, anyone who knows Bruce Wayne's physical and mental rap sheet in this continuity knows that even insinuating the 6'9", 420-pound genius is normal would be anything but fair. However, more than ever, Bruce Wayne is painted as a man here, not a creature of the night, but a determined protector. He feels like a man, and that's something which grounds Absbat to the floor, something which, despite the exaggerated world around him, our Batman is ground to a lot. We find out through Alfred that Bruce ended up in prison following the death of his father, which we'll get into later. Then he went to school and got a scholarship, but he left following a soft tissue injury while playing football, something Alfred notes as being faked by Bruce so he could leave school. Bruce would study applied mechanics, chemistry, criminal psychology, military theory, and socio-cultural history. All of this is pretty standard Bruce Wayne origins business, with him studying these things all to near mastery, but the fact it's never mentioned that he is a master of these things, or a genius, anchors our expectations into a grounded, less superhuman version of Batman. But here's the bit I think which separates Absbat from the conventional take on the Batman character. He studied the city through, and get ready for this, through having a job. I know, sorry for the slur, but this is such a cool explanation as to why Bruce understands the city he protects. I know it sounds silly, but Bruce worked in the power grid, water department, sanitation, he interned at City Hall and learned the political side of Gotham, and eventually, when we meet him, he's an engineer, and I love this. We get an actual explanation as to why Bruce knows Gotham inside out, and that's because he spent a large portion of his life building Gotham, fixing it, even being on site to fix things he breaks on his nightly escapades as Batman, something we see after a fight against Black Mask's gang, which during his shift after the fight, he ends up fixing. It's a relatively big change to the usual Bruce we've become accustomed to, who went out of his way to slum it with Gotham's less fortunate. This Bruce is a part of Gotham's less fortunate. He knows the struggle the average person in the city goes through daily because, rather than being a bystander to the atrocities, poverty and crime rate, Bruce is actually a part of it. He knows the struggle the city's people go through because he himself is a part of that struggle, even going to prison, presumably being forced to go off the rails and delve into the criminal world to get by, or maybe he was just an idiot, who really knows. But the point is, this Bruce, more than any other take on him, is Gotham. He is the struggling man on the corner, the blue-collar worker, the reformed criminal, and eventually he takes a life which he could have turned into that cycle of crime and poverty, into a life of heroism and trying to drag Gotham tooth and nail out of the hole he finds it in. Bruce becomes a part of the city. He literally knows its bones, its veins, its heart, and its blood. That might be a gory allegory for what's essentially a man having a few blue-collar jobs, but it's far from the goriest part of this story, because to myself and many other people's delight, The Zoo, as is all of Absolute Batman, is gory, violent, and staggeringly brutal. Brutality is something that Batman stories are no stranger to. We can look at the Arkham games, Tim Burton's movies, The Cult, The Killing Joke, The Court of Owls, Endgame, The Dark Knight Returns, A Serious House on Serious Earth, Death in the Family, Gargoyle of Gotham, Black Mirror, Damned, Red... Look, you get the point, but Absolute Batman cements itself as one of the most wince-inducing Batman stories in recent years. Bruce's father, Thomas, is killed in a random senseless mass shooting at Gotham Zoo, hence the name of the story being The Zoo. It's a moment like this which sets the tone for the rest of the story, and very few pieces of media tackle things such as mass shootings. It's a very real, very depraved show of brutality. It isn't a comical bit, it isn't a giant parade float full of gas, or even a secret underground death trap race. It's real, it's raw, and it puts Gotham in a grounded world without having to force that down your throat with tactical armour or a gritty detective story. And although it isn't realistic, it's grounded, and yes, they are different things. It's gritty, and it isn't afraid to deal with subjects of serious weight without diluting them down into grand spectacles, and I think that's a huge point in this universe's favour. The story shows us a Batman who spends his time in the Cape and Cowl completely brutalising his foes. In a fight with the story's big bad, the party animals, Alfred, stalking the Dark Knight, notes how brutal but also genuinely efficient he is. He prepares for every contingency. Even when they try to retreat, he sets a trap and blows them up. It's not typical Batman tactics, but if we learn anything from Absolute Batman, it's that he's anything but typical. Some of the ways he takes his foes down are insane, chopping hands off with his suit-built axe, putting his cowl's ears through Black Mask's eyes, booting a small child off a boat, shooting Alfred in the face with a modified shotgun which fires tiny batarangs. Yeah, Absolute Batman does not play. What I appreciate about this is that it often allows itself to get into that comic book violence a lot, and it doesn't let itself become hindered by that. If you've seen any panel from Absolute Batman, especially in the later issues, you'll see the comic book body horror, the over-the-top character designs, and the world which, in everything but tone, is nearly a parody of Batman. And it's within this near parody take on the world it opens itself up to being a gritty but also colourful stylised journey through Batman's world. Although I'm gonna disagree with my own point here. It would be wrong to call this Batman's world, as for the first time in what seems like a very long time, this doesn't feel like Batman's world, it feels like Gotham's world. The best example I can give for this is the way Bruce handles his traditional Batcave system. It isn't hidden under his house or in a clock tower, it's everywhere, a literal systems of caves in the sky. He uses old penthouses, top floor apartments owned by billionaires who never use them. He takes advantage of the wealth and power in Gotham in the same way they take advantage of people like him. They don't know it, but they're actually helping him fight back against the injustices they have a hand in committing. So in a great twist of irony, Bruce is still actually using things well beyond his means to fight crime. I didn't really know where to put this part in the script, but we get a flashback in issue 4 to Batman's first few nights out, where we see him in this universe's first appearance. We get this really poignant moment where we see how Bruce became inspired by a bat, while looking on a school project to build a bridge inspired by the design of a bat, which he eventually turns into both an offensive and defensive design for those who need it in less fortunate parts of the world. We see him stumble on one of his first few outings as Batman. He uses fake fangs to create the image of a vampire, he uses face paint, a voice distorter, and most importantly, a gun. Yes, this actually addresses Batman's use of guns in his early years, and shows that when the time came to pull the trigger, he just couldn't bring himself to do it, so instead he threw it in the fire, ditching the theatrics and becoming the Batman we see in this story. This was such a cool few pages, the art style transports the story into the past, and the fact it addresses his early years is so cool. Again, I didn't really know where else to put this, so sorry if this section feels a bit jammed in, but I feel like I was doing some sort of injustice to this review if I didn't mention it. Earlier on, I mentioned how Absolute Batman often feels like it's bordering on parody a lot of the time, and I mean this as a compliment, because it almost flips the script entirely, and that begins with the character designs and the way it presents these mixed ideas of who and what these characters are. Take Batman for example. He's 6'9", well over 400 pounds, and he's built like Bane is in nearly every other universe. A play on Frank Miller's giant design of an older, more experienced Dark Knight in The Dark Knight Returns and Strikes Back. Black Mask, this story's main villain, is almost a joke. His mask is huge, like seriously, it looks so silly. And it took me a while to kind of understand why this was made, but it works as a visor, a technological advancement on the typical Black mask, which is either bonded to his face or becomes something of a useless gimmick, which he has to have because his name is Black Mask. And then there's Alfred. Oh, dearest Alfred. He essentially becomes Arnold Schwarzenegger's character from Predator, a badass soldier for hire sent to hunt a beast in a jungle he doesn't fully understand. By now we're accustomed to the idea that Alfred doesn't have to be an old sophisticated Englishman who was a servant of the Waynes. One of the best examples of this is Batman Earth 1, where we see Bruce and Alfred butt heads, Alfred even trying to discourage Bruce from his lack of guns, and his mission in general. He teaches Bruce most of what he thinks he should know, and I think if Absbat and Alfred had met earlier in their lives, the same could be said about the pair in this universe, apart from one crucial difference. Alfred actually seems to genuinely respect the work Bruce does. A lot of the zoo is told from Alfred's point of view. A lot of the exposition we get comes from his internal monologue, and this means we get a very matter-of-fact view of the situation. I wouldn't really be touching on everything this story presents us with without at least touching on Bruce Wayne's circle of friends. Yes, that's right, Bruce Wayne has friends. Actual, legitimate, non-crime fighting, normal people friends. They're an eclectic group consisting of a few names you might recognise: Harvey Dent, Oswald Cobblepot, Edward Nygma, Waylon Jones and Selina Kyle. And just in case you aren't following, in any other universe they'd be more commonly referred to as the disgraced former DA Two-Face, the kingpin of Gotham's arms trade, the Penguin, the world's least obnoxious YouTube commenter the Riddler, the best character in all of media Killer Croc, and Bruce's usual love interest, Catwoman. In this universe, the gang are all together, and from what we can infer, regularly spend time together, but I don't think I can explain how much I love this simple change. It recontextualises all of these characters in a way that they've never been. The only two who are really ever Bruce's friends are Selina and Harvey, and even then, Selina only really knows Bruce through Batman, and Harvey is more of a childhood friend and eventually becomes Two-Face, which turns him against Bruce. So it eventually paints these usually one-note characters in a completely new and untapped light. Not much comes of these relationships just yet, aside from a bit of help from Dent and Nygma's robot called Riddler. Seriously, I thought this was quite funny though. We also get a great glimpse at Bruce's life just after the murder of his father, as he discovers Selina's living situation, which is pretty sad. It reminded me a lot of the Gotham TV show Selina Kyle. I don't know why this version specifically, but that's what it conjured up for me. We also get a ton of hints at the Joker, who in this universe is an evil, satanic billionaire, so he's just a billionaire. And even though we don't see much of him, we get enough hints to really leave an impact. Two pilots discuss who he really is, saying they don't know his real name and that it could be Arthur or Jack, in reference to Arthur Fleck from The Joker, and Jack Napier from a ton of other places, but most famously, 1989's Batman movie. And we find out his name is actually ironic, since apparently he literally never smiles, hence the name, The Joker. In this story, we also discover that Joker is one of the 30 richest people on Earth, which is a terrifying thought. It actually kind of flips the Batman and Joker dynamic on its head. Joker is the one with all of the money, and Batman is the one building his gadgets from old parts and building bases around the city. This, again, walks that very thin line between parody and an awesome change. Having Joker be this dark force lurking in the background pulling the strings is almost a complete 180 from his usual loud and proud personality most people would associate with the Clown Prince of Crime. The final thing we see from Jay in this arc is him being told there's been a snag in Gotham, and he simply, hauntingly replies, "I'm aware, it's time, get Bane." When I told you I got chills reading this, I mean it. These three panels set up Bane's arrival and arc so well. It's simple, direct, and above all else, effective at warning us that the man that in most other universes broke the bat is in some way under the thumb of Joker. The story of the zoo is a simple but effective one. A gang known as the Party Animals are terrorising Gotham, a gang which we find out is headed by Roman Sionis, aka the Black Mask, who himself is under the watchful eye of the Joker as well. The Party Animals are burning daycares, the murder rate is up 700%, and Gotham is in shambles. Batman fights back and eventually gets his own back on Sionis, piercing his mask and eyes with his cowl's ears. I don't want to do a full plot recap because I'd implore you, if you somehow haven't, to read this yourself and really get immersed in the world it builds and the story Scott Snyder tells, because it's more than worth it. The story here, though, is fairly simple. Some might say it's generic, but is that a bad thing? I wouldn't say so. It's the first arc of a story which needs to introduce a whole new cast of overhauled characters, set up this Batman as a force of nature while stripping away what makes him that in other continuities, make a world around Batman which feels lived in and believable, and above all deliver a satisfying and intriguing narrative, and somehow it does all of this pretty well. The Alfred subplot is genuinely interesting and eventually ties directly into the main story. Meeting Bruce's friends and knowing what will eventually happen to each one of them since they still fit their character profiles is awesome, and having the story leave us with Joker calling him Bane of all people while wrapped in a garment made of dead babies, it's wonderfully gross and intriguing. Finally, the art, the vessel for which we see the story through, and wow. These 6 issues have some of the most beautiful bits of Batman imagery ever. There's the Batman AF piece, which I know is a bit controversial but is just pure aura spewed onto a page. There's the shot of him kicking the kid off the boat, which is just really funny. The shot of the modified Bat dump truck is beautiful, and one of my favourite sequences in the whole story is when Batman, after tricking Black Mask into believing he'd make a deal with him, which would see Batman stop fighting his gang in return for $200 million, fights back, revealing he spent the money already and then lights the signal up, and aura farms in front of it to prove Black Mask can't just buy Batman out of the crusade against crime. It's so cool, and for me, it's the absolute Batman shot. It's a statement piece, and it symbolises Batman as a whole, a relentless march forward against the tide of crime in Gotham, no matter the consequences. Overall, Absolute Batman the Zoo is a modern day masterpiece and will be looked back at favourably. It, in a lot of ways, revived what was otherwise slowly becoming a stale and repetitive Batman formula, and to sum it up, it's brutal, it's beautiful, and it's absolutely Batman.